I'm coming home, baby. I'm coming home, baby. I'm coming home, baby, now. I'm coming home now, right away. I'm coming home, baby, now. I'm sorry now I ever went away. Every night and day I go and say, I'm coming home, I'm coming home.
Welcome to Piedmont Housing Alliance's series of discussions on building dreams and creating wealth. My name is Karen Reifenberger, and I'll be moderating the discussion today. Piedmont Housing Alliance hosts this series of shows on topics related to our mission. PHA is a regional nonprofit organization with a mission to create affordable housing and community development opportunities for very low to moderate income families and individuals, teach financial literacy and money management, home buying and home ownership skills, and advocate for affordable housing policies and programs. Today's discussion will celebrate home ownership in recognition of National Homeownership Month. Welcome to our guests. I'm pleased to be joined today by a first-time home buyer and two PHA staff members. We'll be talking today about how to prepare yourself financially for home ownership, what the steps are along the way, the challenges and the rewards, and how housing opportunities are created. So let's start our discussion. First, I want to introduce and congratulate Zanita Howard, who is a homeowner. Thank you for coming.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
How long have you owned your home?
I've owned my home for almost 2 years.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Well, we look forward to hearing about your experiences and what you have to share for people. And Joe and Kevin, do you mind introducing yourselves too?
Yeah, I'm Joe Olson, and I've been a housing counselor at Piedmont Housing Alliance since 2003.
And I'm Kevin Wood. I've been with Piedmont Housing for about 5 years. I work in the project side of things, so I've done some single-family homes in the city, and we're currently working on some multifamily housing that is rental housing in Crozet, and we just finished up a project in Charlottesville that was multifamily housing.
Great. Thank you as well. Zanita, I want to start off with you. What inspired you, what prompted you to think about home ownership?
Expensive rent in Charlottesville.
Expensive rent in Charlottesville.
Yes.
I'm sure there's a lot of people who can understand that.
And actually wanting to have something of my own for me and my 3 children.
Wonderful. Joe, can you explain a little bit, as a certified comprehensive housing counselor, can you explain Piedmont Housing Alliance's Regional Homeownership Center and the services?
Yeah, we have a variety of different services. We do monthly financial literacy classes as well as one-on-one housing counseling, and that could be for first-time home buyers, renters, or even folks who already own a home and are facing possible default or foreclosure.
Great. Zanita, how did you get started? How did you hear about Piedmont Housing Alliance?
I heard about Piedmont Housing Alliance. I think I saw a commercial on TV one day. I'm talking about first-time home buyers and the different steps of the program. And I actually got started with the VITA program, which is the savings program.
Great. Tell us a little bit about that.
With the VITA program, I met with the counselor. We actually met once a week. We went over budgets, our debt to income ratios, our credit report, and how we could get our credit report in a better standing. We also worked on a savings account. And with our savings account, the state matched us. We had to save $2,000 and the state matched us with $4,000. So we had 2 years to save the $2,000 in order to get the $4,000, which would give us $6,000 to help with the closing cost and down payment for a home.
Wonderful. Joe, what's your experience with the VITA program? Can you tell folks a little bit more about it?
Sure. I think what Z said is pretty accurate. Folks are required to attend some financial literacy classes and also to contribute on a regular basis to a savings account. And that savings account is matched at a 2-to-1 ratio, and those funds can be used for first-time home buying, and sometimes you can also use the funds for higher education or starting a business.
Great. And is that what led you? Is that what brought some funds to the table for,
Yes.
for your home ownership?
It brought some funds to the table, and it also opened my eyes to my credit standing, and actually able to see and understand a credit report, be able to read a credit report. Being young, sometimes you have outstanding little debts that you forget about, or you're reminded that you need to get those paid off. So little things of that step, actually putting yourself on a budget. We have a grocery budget, household budget, all sorts of incomes. Every dime you spend, you had to write down, and we did that for months at a time. And once a month, we actually had to bring our budget with all our bills and our receipts stapled. So it was an eye-opener. Or where you swipe your card, sometimes you're not thinking those $5 really add up, and that could be paying off a bill.
Oh, excellent. And Joe, you work with a lot of people who go through the budget process, creating a budget and looking at a budget.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where you have to start if you're interested in buying a home, is just sitting down and starting with your personal finance piece and understand how much money is coming into the household and how much is going out and what's flexible and what's not, so that you can prioritize and, like Z said, cut back until you can send money where you need to spend it.
Great. So what's the first step someone should do if they're interested in buying a home?
Well, for us now, you complete an intake form, and that gives the housing counselor all the basic information that they need, and you submit that back to the front office, and you'll be assigned to a housing counselor, and they'll call you for an appointment, and at that point you really do need to gather some documents, pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, basic documentation that kind of substantiates everything that's on the intake form.
Right, so it gives the counselor a financial picture of the household.
Absolutely.
And what are some of the questions on the intake form?
Well, we're getting at 4 basic factors. It's pretty similar to what you would expect if you go to talk to a banker. We're looking at income. Is it high enough to support a mortgage? Is it stable? We're looking at debt. You can make a lot of money, but if you owe a lot of money, that can slow you down. Savings and credit. So those 4 things are what we try to spell out on the intake form.
Right. I know sometimes people are hesitant to talk about their own, what they make and what they spend with other people. What would you tell people who may be feeling that?
Well, I would tell them that your housing counselor actually becomes more of a best friend and a mentor for you. And everything you share with them is confidential. But it's really helpful to have that person to be able to talk to. It's more than just a person working in an office. They touch bases with you at home on a weekly basis to see how you're doing. And it's just more of a mentor and to help you get your mind frame in the right set to be able to get your dream, which is purchase. For me, it was purchasing a house. Sometimes you don't look at the whole big picture of actually the information that like she mentioned about the credit report and the debts and the income. Sometimes it may seem overwhelming for someone, and that's why you have your credit counselors to actually step in and really, really help you, and they take that one-on-one time. And so I'm thankful for PHA for that.
Great. And I know other people too, even just looking at your register for your checkbook, that can be complicated as well.
Right.
So someone might look at an intake form. Can you help someone who
Absolutely.
feels like it's a lot for them?
Sure, it's a client-focused counseling, and so what we try to do is move at the client's pace. So especially when it comes to personal finance, there are some folks who really like that accountability, and we ask you what's helpful. We don't want you to be kind of hesitant to come to an appointment or intimidated. So if meeting on a monthly basis is not helpful, then maybe every 2 months, letting the client determine the time frame for accomplishing their goals. So yeah, it's more one-on-one and hopefully a mentoring relationship.
So what are the things that people really need to focus on when they're getting ready to buy a house? You had mentioned income, debts.
Yeah, Z said pretty much everything. It's income, credit is huge, debt, and savings. So That's probably the number one question people ask us is, how long is this process going to take, and what is it going to look like? And it's different for every person. There are some people who come in and their personal finances are in order, and maybe we'll just meet a few times. And there are other folks who need a little time to work on their debts or to improve their credit, and so they may be working with someone for up to 2 years. So it depends on where that person's starting from.
Okay. See, how long did it take you?
It took me 2 years.
And that's from when you started the financial literacy, education and counseling, and the VITA match savings program to when you bought your house?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about credit, because I know that's one of the major issues that can be a roadblock for people interested in home ownership. They may very well make enough to afford a house payment, but their credit's standing in the way.
Yeah, credit comes up a lot. We do have the ability to pull credit reports, and so if the client hasn't seen their credit report or doesn't know, if they don't know what their scores are, then typically that happens during a first appointment, and that gives you a baseline, where you're starting, and what you may see, like some small, you'd be surprised what you see on a credit report. I've seen $5 co-pays show up as a collection. So it's really interesting to start there and decide how much time they need to improve the score. And scores are important because they have a direct relationship with the interest rate you're going to be offered when you go to purchase a home. So the more time you spend improving your score, the lower interest rate you're going to get, and that's important because you'll probably have it for 30 years. So it's worth the time to improve your credit before you move forward.
Right. And for people who don't even know what a credit report is, can you explain a little bit about what that is and the impact?
Sure. Yeah. A credit report has basic information. There are 3 different credit bureaus in the U.S., and they're all collecting your personal information, ID information, as well as your payment history with different creditors. And so they report 30, 60, and 90-day late payments. And then there's a separate section for collections. And like I said, that could be something random, like a medical copay that didn't get paid. And then there's another section, public records, and that would be usually a larger lien. If there's undue unpaid rent or something like that, it would show up there. And all of those things go together to create your score, which is basically like a grade in school. Banks have decided what a minimum score is in order to get a loan. And then beyond that, like I said, there's a relationship between your score and how good or how low your interest rate is going to be.
And I've heard that there's other situations where your credit is looked at, where your credit score might be looked at. Some jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Insurance.
Yep. Car insurance. I believe they're trying to, and some companies are trying to determine your rates for paying car insurance based on your credit score. If you travel at all, if you are trying to rent a car to travel or reserve a hotel room, they pull or they need a credit account, and if you have poor credit or you don't have credit, those are barriers, something that you really do need to establish, even if you think homeownership is not in your near future.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a big issue, whether you're a renter or looking at home ownership, and a big issue in a number of different aspects of someone's life. So for someone who's young who may think, oh, I'm only a couple days late paying a bill, does that show up on the credit report?
Not typically, and that's what we always tell people. If you go on vacation and you realize, oops, I forgot to pay that, and I'll just wait and pay it next month, you do want to go ahead and send it in because they're reporting 30-day late, 60-day, and 90-day. So it's worth the trouble of sending a separate check and paying it off. Yes.
Okay, good. And any quick tips, someone who is trying to either repair credit or establish credit if they don't have any?
Yeah, I would say that the most important thing is when you're opening a credit account to make sure that they do report to all 3 credit bureaus. A lot of, in particular, small companies that extend credit, they don't report to all 3, and so you're borrowing money to start a history and you may not even be building a history. So probably the best thing is to start with a secured credit card because they do in fact report to all 3 credit bureaus. And it's a great way to get your foot in the door.
And that's something you use your credit card and you pay it back each month, and that helps build your credit.
Right. It's number one, you're not going to get turned down for it because you're giving them a security deposit in exchange for the credit card. And so after you make your deposit and they give you a card, you can use it and then pay it off each month so that you're building your history without building any debt. And so that's great.
And these are things that local financial institutions have here in Charlotte.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Anita, was credit an issue for you? Did you have anything that you specifically had to work on, and any tips that you could pass on to people about improving credit?
Yes. Actually, with working with PHA over the 2 years, I actually was able to bump my credit score over 100 points. Looking at some old debts that maybe you forgot about, you didn't think was important, getting paid off. Credit card debt is the #1 debt that we actually worked on from day one. Once we sat down and looked at my credit report, we saw that there was, you have small little balances on credit cards. Well, let's go ahead and take care of those. One thing I did learn from my housing counselor is if you have multiple credit cards, start with paying off the lower ones first, and then you're able to take the money that you were applying to the smaller ones and you can add those to the bigger ones. So that was something that we learned from our counselors, that you have multiple things out there. Start off with your lowest debt, getting those paid off first, and then work on your bigger debts. And over a time frame, you will see that it'll all work itself out. I did have, of course, student loans on my credit report that showed up, but those are something that I have paid every month, and I pay them on time, so that really wasn't too big of a stance. I know a lot of people are worried about buying a home because they say, well, we have student loans, but if you're paying your student loans and you're paying your student loans on time, I think the bank is going to look at that a little bit different versus credit that you're not paying off at all. So definitely look at that credit report and see where you can slot extra money. Like I said, working with them over 2 years, I bumped my credit score up over 100 points.
That's good. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And is there a goal or something that people might want to be shooting for a credit score for homeownership?
I think it's a little bit of a changing landscape. Everyone's aware of the credit crunch that's going on from the fallout of default foreclosure, but 620 is a good minimum. If you think about grades in school, that's like a C, so you're passing, and that's usually the threshold that a lender will either approve you or they won't require a cosigner because 620 means that you've got fairly decent credit. So.
Right. And a housing counselor can help you walk through your credit score and give you ways to move that score on up.
Absolutely. Yep.
So what are the steps to home ownership? But it can seem like a complicated process, but I know PHA has tried to simplify the concept with the idea of 5 steps to home ownership.
Well, I guess every appointment or first appointments start with establishing what your goals are. So PHA has 3 goals. Number 1, we want to educate the home buyer on the general process. How do you buy a house? Familiarize them with some of the language that they're going to hear because they'll be working with a lender, they'll be working with a real estate agent, a home inspector. That's our primary goal. Our secondary goal is to figure out exactly what their readiness is, their personal readiness is, and that's where we dig into their income, debt, credit, savings. And that's kind of like a financial checkup, and getting you prepared to go and talk to the lender and identifying if there are any red flags in those areas, what you need to do to address that. And then our third goal is to actually look at your eligibility to determine if you're eligible for any of the down payment, closing cost assistance, or low interest mortgage money that's available to our local area.
So Nina, tell us about your process, the steps you went through in getting ready to buy a house, and how working with a counselor helped you.
Once my counselor and I had sat down and determined that we were financially able and steady, that the debts were paid off and the credit score was at the right where it needed to be. Then I was referred to a mortgage company at SunTrust Bank, and that's where I went and I did my initial application. And basically, we sat down and we talked about income, debt, and things with the home, and now having a mortgage payment. We also talked about interest rates and what was going to be expected of me as far as getting a home inspector. So that was the next step for me. And I must say that it was kind of scary at first to go sit in the big bank office because you don't know what to expect. But the lady was very nice and kind, and she worked very diligent with me. I also had a realtor already in place that I had worked with Piedmont Housing Alliance to find a realtor and have a realtor already in place. And so basically, when we went to the bank, it was to do a pre-qualification to see what I qualified for. And then from that, we went on with the realtor just to start looking for homes. So it was actually going to the bank first to see what you qualify for, and then from there, working with your realtor to find a property.
And I think that's a common, you did it the right way, but I think that's a common mistake. The fun part of buying a house is shopping, and so a lot of people will go out looking at homes first before they talk to a lender, and that just kind of sets you up for disappointment. And so it's great to get your, number one, get your personal finances in check, and you determine for yourself what you feel comfortable spending on a mortgage payment. Then you go and talk to the lender, and they give you an actual pre-approval, and they make sure that you're eligible for a loan. And then you establish a relationship with a real estate agent and start looking. That's the right order to do it in. So.
And how does someone know that they're ready to go get pre-qualified, to go start shopping, looking around for houses? What does it mean to have someone ready for homeownership?
A lot of times it comes down to the credit and the debts, because for most people, income, it is what it is. So it's either going to be high enough to support a mortgage, or maybe they need to go out and look for higher income. But typically people walk in and maybe they have a car payment that's really high, and maybe they need time to pay that off. So getting their debt load into something that's manageable, that would make you ready. And of course, what Z was saying about letting your score grow and balance out so that you get a better interest rate. So once those things are in line, you're mortgage ready.
And are there any pitfalls that you've seen people fall into, or anything that you would tell someone, stay away from this if you're looking towards homeownership?
Do you have?
Well, I also had friends that were also in the process of purchasing a home at the same time I was, so I was getting tips and hints from them. But one thing was to listen to your lender, and when they tell you how much that you qualify for, you don't want to go out and just look for a home just because the bank says you qualify for this amount. You want to find something that you're going to be comfortable with. And the lender at the bank actually said to me, Z, how much can you afford? I know what I'm telling you you qualify for, but you give me a breakdown and you tell me how much you want to spend on a mortgage. And once I gave her that amount, she typed up some figures and then she presented me with a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet it says, okay, this is how much house you can get for this amount of payment every month. So she worked out, different deals like that. So that was also a help. That's, a little footnote for you to take that spreadsheet when you're out looking for a home. And yes, you do want to find something that you like, but you also don't want to go above your demeanors and then you end up in foreclosure.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
And Joe, if you could tell a little bit about the process that other people have been through. Is it pretty much the same in terms of the steps? Mm-hmm. And also, can you talk a little bit about people's choices and who they work with?
Sure. Z was participating in the VITA program, so that's a slightly different approach, but it boils down to, again, what is the client's time frame? Some folks are ready to roll when they come in. We review their 4 we call them compensating factors. And if they don't have any red flags, then it's more about collecting documents. And again, a lot of folks are interested to know if they're eligible for any assistance, down payment and closing cost assistance. So they gather their documents for our appointment, and typically those are the same documents they're going to need to take to the lender. So PHA's focus is education and sometimes determining eligibility, whether it's for VITA or something else. But there is definitely a handoff. They work with a lender to get pre-approved for the actual loan, and then the lender is working in conjunction with PHA to see if their loan products are compatible with the different programs that we have. So the process can move forward quickly, or if someone has a car payment or any of the stuff that we've talked about, that will slow it down. But it doesn't have to be a long process.
And they have a choice to work with any number of lenders, any number of real estate agents. We're there to determine eligibility and to give them the confidence so that when they walk into the lender's office, they feel comfortable asking questions so that they feel like they're kind of steering the ship. But yeah, they are welcome to work with any lenders, and the lenders sometimes send them in our direction. So sometimes it happens backwards, where they talk to a lender and they send them back to us for education. So yeah, I know there are a lot of successful partnerships that PHA has worked on, whether it be with lenders or also the Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors. There are affordable housing advisors, I understand, that are real estate agents who are specifically educated on some of the aspects of housing counseling and first-time home buyers.
Right. I think that's one of the educational courses that we've offered locally to teach some of the real estate agents, if they're interested, about these different programs to help folks find affordable loan products and houses. So I know quite a few agents have taken that course, and they specialize in working with first-time home buyers. So that's a great thing.
Yeah, and I think it's good for real estate and lending professionals to know that if they're working with someone who's not quite ready yet, they don't have to say, "You're not ready, come see me when you are." They can say, "You're not quite ready,
send them back to us.
Work with Piedmont Housing Alliance and then come back and see me."
Yes.
So I think that's a good partnership to have.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Some people think that they will never be able to afford a home. What would you say to someone like that?
Anything is possible. Is what I would say to anyone. If you have that mindset and frame, then you probably won't be ready. But if you have it set as a goal, and it's a goal that you want to achieve, with any goal, you're going to work hard to achieve that goal. So for me, purchasing a home was a goal, and I said by the time I turned 30, I want to have a home. And when I turned 30, I had a home. So it was a process that you have to just set a goal. I had to set a goal, had to set a budget, and I had to stick with it. And once you have that in your mind frame, you're able to do anything. And I think it's possible for anyone. I'm a single mom of 3, so I think that if I can do it, then I'm sure anyone can do it if they put their mind to it.
Great. Are there programs? I know you took advantage of the match savings program, so the $2,000 that you saved was actually $6,000.
Correct.
Are there some other financial programs out there that would help a home be more affordable to someone?
Sure, yeah. That's what we look at for eligibility. They have different requirements, so some of them require jurisdiction, that you live in the jurisdiction that they're serving, but basically for the Region 10 area, I would say that there are several options for down payment and closing cost assistance, which can be a great help. And then there's also access to low interest rate mortgage money that can also give you a really affordable loan. So yes, definitely.
That's good news. There's oftentimes this gap between what someone can afford and what the general home prices that they see are. So it's good to know that there are some programs out there, and just talk to people to see if you qualify. I think it's too difficult to talk about eligibility right now because I know it deals with how many people in your household, where do you live, but that's the kind of information that a counselor can give.
Right.
Kevin, can you talk about Piedmont Housing Alliance's role in creating home ownership opportunities?
Sure. I guess speaking to the down payment assistance and closing cost assistance, we perceive ourselves as a one-stop shop. So you come in to the Regional Home Ownership Center, you get your financial counseling, maybe you go through VITA, you get ready to buy a home, and you realize, well, I would like some additional down payment assistance. Well, we work very closely with a lot of different organizations in the area, including the county and the city. We also work with CAR, as you mentioned, to compile down payment assistance so that people may be able to get up to $20,000 down on their home that they didn't have. And that's going to make the home much more affordable. We also have a very strong relationship with VHDA, the Virginia Housing Development Authority. And year over year, we get an allocation from them so that we can provide below market rate mortgage products. So instead of paying maybe 6 or 7%, you may be paying 4 or 5% on your mortgage, and that makes a big difference.
It sure does. So PHA obviously does education and counseling services, but also builds housing. Can you talk about some of PHA's development projects?
Sure. We've worked closely initially with the city of Charlottesville in several neighborhoods around town. First being the Star Hill neighborhood, where we did probably 6 or 8 homes, and then on Hinton Avenue we did several homes. Probably the most high-profile project we did was at 10th and Page, where we did 31 single-family homes, both rehab and new homes. And we also did about 6 or 7 homes in Fifeville, all working with the city of Charlottesville, all with some very high level of affordability. Our perception being that someone earning 80% of the area median income should be able to afford most of the homes we build. And I think we've been very successful doing that.
What's PHA's sort of vision when they're looking at a neighborhood or an individual home? What are some things that are important to PHA's project team?
Well, a lot of different things in the project. First and foremost, we are working with a partner that is the city of Charlottesville. So the city had an initiative to revitalize specific neighborhoods, 10th and Page being one, Fifeville being another, particularly in the 2002-2003 period. So that partnership was very critical to us. Clearly, we wanted to do a high level of affordability. So if we look at what we did at 10th and Page, we did 31 homes over there. 70% of those homes were eventually sold to people earning under 80% of the area median income, I think on average about $23,000 a year. So that is a very important part of that. The other thing we try to do is produce highly energy efficient homes. So we built some of the first Energy Star homes in the area, in Charlottesville. That allows the new homeowner to have very low utility bills, so that their budget is not strained by that portion of what it costs to own a house. What else? Am I forgetting something? I think those are the main ingredients.
Great. And what are some of the challenges that a nonprofit housing developer has in creating a healthy mix of housing options for sale?
Mix was the one I think I might have missed. Sort of the fourth thing is we believe in mixed income communities, and that's what we end up creating, and then I'll answer this question. Some of the pitfalls, particularly now in what has been, particularly in 2006, a very hot real estate market, are that we really can't afford to purchase and then redevelop properties and still make them affordable because the real estate prices had gotten so high. We're now moving into an area or a period of time where real estate prices have actually gone down again. So here in 2010, things are becoming a little more affordable. Piedmont Housing is not so much developing single-family homes for home buyers at this stage, though, because things are still a little probably too pricey for that. We have moved a little more toward providing affordable rental opportunities in the city and in the region. And I think that sort of jibes pretty well with what's going on, because as the real estate market got hot and then started to come down some and people were coming into hard economic times, we were seeing that rental prices were actually going up. So affordable rental becomes pretty important.
What is the housing market like right now? Z, if you have friends who are looking, or Joe, clients that you're working with, are there decently priced houses out there?
Well, I think it's hopeful. I think it's really exciting right now because I do feel like that's the major challenge for first-time home buyers is lack of affordable housing. And so in the last year or more, maybe the last 2 years, we've just seen the prices come down. And so there are more affordable options for first-time home buyers. And that's just great because there's less gap now between what they can afford and what's for sale on the market. So absolutely, I feel like it's a good time to be trying to buy. Yeah.
And the statistics bear that out. I mean, if you go to the CAR website, you'll see that the average, I think it's probably the median sales price in 2006 for a home in the Charlottesville area was something like $290,000. Now it's more like $235,000. So that means that there are several homes in the area under $200,000 and getting closer to $175,000, and all of a sudden they're becoming much more affordable than they were. And square footage prices, which is another way that we look at these things, have gone from $170,000 to $140,000. So you're getting more bang for your buck as you get into a new home.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of research out there about the benefits of home ownership for individual families and also for the communities. There's information about how children in a home ownership situation attain higher education level and later higher incomes, and for neighborhoods that there's a stabilizing factor. Individually for you, Z, what are some of the benefits of home ownership that you found for your family?
I think it makes you have a little bit more pride, and you respect your property, your neighbors. I know with my girls, if they see a piece of trash on the sidewalk, instead of walking past it, they'll pick it up because it's in front of their house. So you want to make sure that your house is nice and you keep it up. So little small things. And then just the pride of saying, you own a home. You're no longer a renter, but you actually own something and you actually have something. It's a big dream for a lot of people. And I think that just the solubility and just knowing that something's yours, it makes a big difference. You do more upkeep. You're outside with your neighbors, cutting your grass and keeping up yards and talking, and it just, it's just more pride, and I think it does help the children in school. Just sets a little bit more higher standard for them.
Would you add anything you've heard from other clients?
That's major ownership and just the stability it brings to community as well. You are going to stop and get to know your neighbors if you're planning to be there for a while, and I think that's a huge benefit to all of us. I think some people just really appreciate the control they have over their housing expense. I mean, yes, insurance and taxes will go up, but versus paying rent, where landlords typically raise the rent every year, every few years. When you're in a fixed rate mortgage, it gives you some confidence that you know basically what your expenses are going to be as related to the house. So I think that settles people's minds too.
It's also important to remember that a home is a good investment, particularly over the long term. I think we got into a period in the last few years where people were trying to make quick money, flipping homes and that kind of thing, which is not really what I'm talking about. But over a 10, 15, 20, 30-year period, this will probably be the biggest investment any of us make. And as we get into old age, it'll be one of our best investments because we'll realize, well, we can actually get money against this, or we can pass this on to our children. Or that type of thing is pretty critical.
That's what I was going to bring up. I mean, the title of this show is Building Dreams and Creating Wealth, and that's one of the things that Piedmont Housing Alliance believes in, is that once you have ownership of this asset, down the road you may need to use it to borrow for education for your children. I don't think there's anyone who could afford higher education right now without some financial help, but you can borrow against your home for things that you need, things that are important, and then pass it on to your family. It's a solid asset.
And I think we lose sight of that in this sort of crazy market we've seen, but I think over the long haul it will bear itself out again.
So Anita, what are some tips you'd pass on to other people? Anything about what you learned or anything unexpected that happened to you that you wish you had known earlier?
I guess getting over the fear of the hump. When I walked into Piedmont Housing Alliance and I filled out the paperwork, I had the mind frame set that I would never own a home. but it's actually just getting over that mindset and frame. I would encourage people to go by and just check out Piedmont Housing Alliance. Even if you're not looking to buy a home right now, there's still other programs and opportunities that they have out there. And you know, it's always, just go stick your head in the friendly door and say hi. I mean, they're always welcoming everybody. The receptionist will smile at you and she'll help you around and show you different things. And I just think that Piedmont Housing Alliance has a lot to offer people, whether it be buying a home or financial education. I know the classes are, you know, they're really helpful. They give you a lot of information. I still actually have my budgeting information at work in my desk drawer. Small things like a grocery list, you know. They give you something like that to, you know, check off as you need things. And I think it's a relationship that you can build that lasts a lifetime. Don't be scared or feel intimidated. I think that you all are there and to help. And, you know, once you realize that there's someone that's willing to be there and help you. I mean, my housing counselor still calls me now just to check on me, just to say hi. You know, you need any help with anything? Is there something we can do for you? So, you know, that's very nice. You build that relationship, and it looks like it's a lifetime friendship.
That's a wonderful story to pass on.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you. What would you say was your key to success?
My key to success was staying positive. Not letting the numbers scare you, because when you look at the whole big picture, it might intimidate you at first. But you have to look at the whole big picture as this is a lifetime goal. And like you said, in a few 10, 20 years, it's a nice investment that you also have. So I guess once you get over the fear and know that you can do this, it's a great opportunity and a great chance. I think just like when I think about the day that I went to the bank, and then we were talking about interest rates, there's a big difference with the interest rate. The same home that I'm living in now, when I first went to the bank, the rates weren't doing good at all. And a month later, I went from a 7% interest rate to a 4.5% interest rate. So that was a $300 drop in a house payment. So it's just, there's things out there and there's
every
help.
month.
Yeah, I mean, because we went to looking at one figure, and I still have the original sheets. I kept everything. And the original sheet showed me one amount, and when I went back a month later, it dropped $300.
That's a huge difference.
Yes.
And I think that speaks to what Joe was saying before about getting people ready, getting people to a point, because I think the last thing we would want people to do is rush into something that's going to cost them $300 a month. I'm not good at math, but over a lifetime, that's a whole lot of money.
Right.
And if you can just wait 6 months, maybe a year, and get your credit to a place where you can be saving $300 a month,
Right.
and have someone help you do that, that's a big difference. Joe, you do a lot of different counseling at PHA, and I know that homeownership isn't for everyone.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about when you discuss with people renting versus buying?
Sure. Yeah, we all agree that homeownership is the American dream, but that it may not be for everyone at every time in their life. And so sometimes it's smarter to rent. And we do have rental counseling, and it looks a lot like housing counseling because you start at the same place. You're looking at your credit, you're looking at your income, you're trying to establish a budget if you don't have one. But mostly I think it comes down to what are your goals. If your goals are short, if your short-term goals are, you're not sure that you want to stay in the area, that homeownership is really a buy-in and you're putting your roots in the community. If you're not ready to make that commitment, then of course renting is probably the best option for you. Like Kevin was saying a couple years ago, people were buying with the idea that they could sell very quickly and make a profit, and that's just not true anymore. So if you're not sure about the area, that would be a reason to rent. Or even if you feel like your income is not stable. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, I would be very hesitant to make a commitment to a mortgage. You don't know what the cost of maintenance and upkeep will be, especially during that first year. You don't know. So if you find yourself really, living paycheck to paycheck, then you probably want to start slow and build a savings and get control of your finances first before you take that step to homeownership.
Good advice. So talking about renting, Kevin, what are some of PHA's rental developments? Can you talk a little bit about
Sure.
that?
I've been with PHA about 5 years, and we started with a project. We have about 360 rental units in the area, which I think is a little known fact. I think people sort of think of us as a single-family home developer, but we have a lot of rental units that we either own or manage. We have either redeveloped or newly constructed probably 110 or something like that units in the last 2 years or 3 years. When I started with Vernita Court, which is over in the Rose Hill neighborhood, and we renovated 16 units using the low-income housing tax credit, which is something we've used all along. Monticello Vista we just finished, which is a 50-unit building over in Belmont. We use the low-income housing tax credit there as well. We have a project going out in Crozet that was an existing project that had 28 elderly one-bedroom units in it, and now we're going to redevelop that and add some units to a total of 66. So we have a variety of different projects, from elderly to family units to units for disabled people. We have units that are fully accessible. In fact, the last 2 projects we did, Monticello Vista has 50% of their units fully accessible. Crozet Meadows, because it's an elderly project, has 100% of the units are fully accessible, all on one level. You know, anybody in a wheelchair or a walker could use these units quite easily and get around the property on walking paths and things like that. So we're focused on providing rental units to a variety of different folks.
That's wonderful, and I know accessibility comes up a lot when we're talking about providing housing for people with disabilities, but I want to educate people about the fact that accessible rental units, accessible housing, meaning having a no-step entrance and wide enough hallways and doorways for a wheelchair, that benefits everybody. So many people, whether you're pushing a stroller, whether you're carrying lots of groceries, whether you're moving a couch into your living room, that wider doorway, that no-step entrance, those wider hallways are wonderful, and I know PHA's projects do that.
Sorry, Karen, there are 2 other aspects of that. Visitability. I mean, even if somebody is quite able to get around in steps, if they have an older relative or a friend who wants to come over and visit, it's nice to have that visitability. And also just aging in place, we're all going in that direction. So at some point, you know, I'm going to be 70 years old and I might not be nearly as able as I am today to do the things I do now. So it's a pretty critical thing.
Right. And PHA is not the only nonprofit housing developer out there. I know we just don't have many more spaces at this table, but I want to make sure that people know also about there are other nonprofits doing good work out there and creating additional housing opportunities. So for people who are looking, there is hope. There are new housing opportunities every day, whether it's on the Realtor Association website or a new project that someone's doing. We've heard a lot lately, of course, about the foreclosure crisis. And I've heard that at PHA, a couple of years ago, we had about 350 new homeownership clients, people coming in wanting to pursue homeownership. And that now that number has dropped, and what's increased are the people who are homeowners and they're in trouble paying their mortgage. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit, Joe, about PHA services, how people can get help if they're behind on their mortgage or fear that there might be?
Sure. Usually the first time someone falls 30 days late on their mortgage, their lender is required on that notice, that late notice, to send them to HUD's website, and HUD will send them to a HUD certified housing counseling agency like us. So they find their way to us, and we're there in some of the same capacity as for first-time home buyers. We're going to go over your budget, understand what money's coming in, what money's going out, with the addition of having a mortgage as part of those expenses. But the most important thing we do is educate the homeowner on how to communicate with the lender, There are programs now that exist for folks who are having difficulty making their payment. Sometimes it's referred to as HAMP, sometimes it's referred to as Making Home Affordable, and lenders also have their own in-house programs. So remaining in contact with the lender as soon as you fear that you're going to fall behind. And like I said, at PHA, we'll educate you on how to better communicate with the lender and how to navigate, we call it loss mitigation, how to navigate that process of trying to work out a solution with the lender so you can avoid foreclosure.
So Nita, what tips do you have for people who, they may be new homeowners, in terms of keeping your budget on track and keeping things moving smoothly as a homeowner?
I would suggest not going out and buying a lot of new things when you first move into your house. I know that everyone wants to have new things in your new home, but you don't want to get yourself into a debt where you won't be able to afford to pay off those new things now that you have a house payment. What I would suggest doing is keeping your savings going, because you never know when something may break or you might have to replace something in your home. So it's always good to have that savings to be able to nest off of. And remember your credit, and you want to keep that in good standings. Even though you have your home now, you still want to continue to build those good relationships with those creditors out there of debts that you still are paying off and that you might inquire. I would just say to remember everything that you learned in your process. Remember the savings. Remember paying bills on time. And if you need help, there's nothing wrong with calling the creditor and explaining your situation and see if they're able to help you. But you just don't want to get behind.
I know you have another job, but I think you could do housing counseling. We only have an hour, and that hour is almost over. So I wanted to wrap up by asking, how can people learn more?
Well, I know we have a website that people can go to.
www.piedmonthousingalliance.org.
Yep. Like Z said, we also have a great reception. If you just call in to the office, you'll be put in the right direction, whether it's first-time home buyer, default, foreclosure. You'll receive that intake form. And then another way is the classes that we've mentioned. If you just kind of want to dip your toe into it and see, we do offer those classes on a monthly basis. We've got the financial literacy classes that rotate, and then every month at CAR we teach a first-time home buyers class, which is an overview of the entire process from beginning to end. And so if you're not sure that you want the one-on-one, you could at least come to that class and get the big picture and then decide from there. So those are great ways to get more information about it.
Great. Well, this concludes our session on celebrating homeownership. Thank you so much to the guests, and I hope the viewers have learned a lot. We look forward to continuing this series with more discussions on money management, homeownership, affordable housing, fair housing, and more. All of our sessions will air on Charlottesville Public Access Television, Comcast Channel 13, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 p.m. And if you have any questions or comments regarding any of the programs, we welcome them. Please contact Piedmont Housing Alliance at 817-2436 or info@piedmonthousing.org. Thank you.
Back now, right. I'm pressing on, baby, now. I wanna feel you hold me tight. When I'm in your arms, I'll be high. I'm coming home. I'm coming home now, yeah, yeah, yeah. The road is long, baby, now. Let me hear you say. To stay. I'm coming home, baby, now. Can't hold me back now, alright. I'm pressing on, baby, now. I wanna feel you hold me tight. When I'm in your arms, I'll be high. I'm coming home. I'm coming home now. here to stay.